Welcome to the Raw and Wild Hearts, a place where the raw, the unfiltered, the wild hearts gather to celebrate triumphs and hardships, learn from each other, grow together, and break down a culture rooted in fear. We will talk, we will laugh, and we will lean on each other about everyday life experiences that we could all use a little support through, and then we'll bask in the wild, magical beings that we are. My philosophy is that by embracing the dark, we may just let in the light. I am your host, Lori Rising, healer, educator, writer, adventurer, retreat leader, birth defender, and animal enthusiast and activist, along with my wild heart sidekick kitty, Jesus the Brave. We'd like to invite you to get excited about the Wild Heart Revolution. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode, part 2 of Dedicated to the Ones Who Love Us the Most, our animals. We will be taking a deeper look at animal behavioral training, animal death doulas, and the reality of animal rescue. But before I get into the episode, let's talk about 2 wonderful local businesses who reached out and supported us in our launch event. One Love Cellars is a winery with huge heart. As a mother and daughter run operation, you feel like family every step of the way. Their wine is cultivated with love and heart. When you know the people behind your glass of vino are the kind of wild heart warriors this world needs, it's an easy decision to stock up for your holiday parties, gifts, and beyond. Next up is Groundbreaker Brewery. As a gluten-free person myself, Groundbreaker is my go-to for finely crafted, serious tasty brews sans gluten. Make sure you stop by their gastropub in Portland, Oregon, or for your beer drinking friends, stock up on their brews for your holiday parties and New Year's celebrations. I would also like to take this time to thank all of you, the listeners. This passion project of mine has been a distant dream for years. I feel so blessed and excited that I was finally able to make it a reality. It's only possible, though, with your support, so thank you from the depths of my soul. If you feel moved to rate or review the show, that would be such a gift. If you have space on your phone, though, subscribe to the show or even share it with someone who you might think it resonates with. I finally got a new phone myself, and now I have space, so I'm like a kid in the candy store subscribing to all kinds of shows. I have some crazy exciting episodes coming up. I can hardly sleep since my brain is buzzing from the anticipation of them. I really think you're going to love them as well. So today, I definitely want to include a sensitivity warning. Mia and I talk about how important it is to forewarn folks before we have talks with them about upsetting situations, so I am backing that up. We will be talking about euthanasia along with the role of animal death doulas. Mia talks in detail about a euthanasia she witnessed that moved her toward death doula work. We will also be talking about a specific and emotional behavioral euthanasia that we experienced together. As a side note, Mia did give me permission to not cut out any of the tender parts. It is hard to hear and hard to talk about, but so important that we do. This is the result of humans failing animals. It's a big reality in shelters and rescues all over the world. This is why I did this interview. Inadequate and harmful training techniques can lead to heartbreaking results, and there are so many animals that don't get to transition in a warm, loving home. So I'm willing to talk about it so more people talk about it, and we do better by our animals. You will see his picture on this episode's blog. It's my way of honoring his beautiful spirit and making sure his fear of the world and ultimate sacrifice at our failure is going to make change for others. Rest in peace, sweet boy. So be sure to check out the podcast show notes for all of the wonderful resources that Mia mentions. Seriously, Mia knocked this one out of the park. She is a walking beacon of education, and animals and animal guardians are so blessed to have such a powerful advocate on their side. And lastly, I did give a tiny bit of background to my co-host Kitty, Jesus the Brave's adoption story. But if you want to see a sweet little video I made of her rescue, the loss of her eyes, and adoption, go to our YouTube channel at The Raw and Wild Hearts to check it out. She will absolutely melt your heart. Now, on to the show. So I had been with this particular rescue organization for maybe like 3 years. I feel like you came on maybe a year into my time with them.
Okay.
How did you find them? Had you just moved to Portland or?
No, I had, volunteered with a couple other shelters in Portland. They were shelters, and they were not quite the right fit for me. I wanted something more hands-on than what they were able to, provide for a volunteer. Shelters are often run very, very differently than a rescue. But I actually walked into Food Fight, the vegan grocery store, and they had a little box on the counter for donations for the rescue. And I was like, oh God, if Food Fight loves you, then clearly this must be a good place. And I shot them an email and heard back a day later, and rest is history.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, it was Food Fight.
I heard of them because I was looking to adopt a dog. I had my senior kitty cat who loved companions but didn't love other kitty cats. They had a senior dog on there that liked cats, and because I think it was she was living in a foster home, they knew this about her. And so I got a hold of the rescue, and I was volunteering with another rescue at the time, fostering for another rescue. And they were like, oh, we're sorry, the dog's foster home is adopting her. And I was like, what? I was like, why is she up on the website? Because of course I had started to get attached or whatever. So that was a little tough for me to handle, but I really liked them. And so I got a hold of them after that and thought, well, I can't adopt the dog, but maybe I can be a foster home for you. And they were relatively new. I think they were only going for maybe 6 months or maybe a year by the time I got it. Yeah. And back then is when we had maybe 5 foster homes at a time.
Wow.
When the director would post dogs available for foster, we had to beg people. Nowadays, it's like they're going like hotcakes. Let's explain the rescue. So the rescue is a foster-based, all-breed, no-kill dog rescue.
Correct.
I feel like this is really important.
Yeah, it is important.
Yeah. So all breed, which means they take every breed. There's no restrictions on breed.
Correct. And
no-kill dog rescue.
Correct.
But then we're going to add a little bit more to the amazing part of this rescue. They will take any dog back into the rescue organization at any point of that dog's life.
Yes.
So any dog that has the blessing of coming into this rescue organization will never see a shelter again.
Correct.
I feel like that is huge.
Yes.
What an amazing model.
It is. It's a responsible model. It's an ethical model. Yep.
How do we get more? How do we get more people to do this?
Convince more people to foster, I guess, right? Setting a good example, teaching people about the rewards of foster and saving a life. And
right.
Yeah.
So when you foster, you actually save 3 lives. When I used to volunteer, when I said used to, like I said, they were a much smaller organization when I started. So I would go to all the events and basically try to drum up volunteers in foster homes. And I love talking, but I also love talking about animal rescue. I could do it all day long, every day. And I would tell kids that if their parents were thinking about fostering and I would talk to them about the benefits of fostering, that was a fact that I would give them, that, when you foster a dog, you actually save 3 lives. Oh, and they would get wide-eyed. They'd get so excited. Again, targeting the youth and really educating the youth. So what happens when you foster a dog is that when that dog gets adopted, they go on to a family. Then you take another dog out of the shelter system into the foster home, and then another dog off the streets or in an unfit home or whatever goes into the shelter system.
That's your 3.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
It could actually even be more than 3 if people have good experiences. Maybe they'll adopt again,
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like the bar was pretty high with the success of this type of rescue. And then you joined. Oh. And then I think a couple more trainers joined.
Yeah.
After you.
Since I've been there, we've recruited 5 other humane dog trainers.
5? Oh, I guess I know of 2 other. I didn't know that there were 5. That's amazing.
We've got 5. Let me just count in my head. 1, 2. Yeah, we've got 5 others.
Well, that's great, because when you were doing the bulk of it, I didn't know how you found the time to do it. That was pretty amazing. So I'm glad that there's more people to, spread across.
Yeah, and it's really lovely. Like, the other trainers get mad at me if I hog all the dogs. So it's great to know that, they really, 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 really want to help.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. It's lovely.
Right. And before you all came on, so we're a social media based, I guess you would say, because there's no actual shelter, which is actually better for the rescue, less resources, because we don't have to, pay to have this whole shelter running. Right. You see things come through the feeds about, what's happening with the foster homes or the dogs behaviorally and how challenging that could be for fosters that don't know how to work with that kind of separation anxiety or, that kind of fear or, whatever may be coming up. And then I was watching that. And I was even part of it. I remember I had a dog that had pretty severe separation anxiety, and she got her jaw caught in the bottom of the crate while I was gone. Oof. Oh, and I came in and it was so scary to come into, and she's fine. She's okay. Oh, there was one trainer before you. So now I'm remembering. Yeah. And so she went to that trainer to work with the separation anxiety because I was actually working out of the home, and I'm by myself. Being gone for that many hours, I was so scared that something would happen physically to this dog. So when trainers come on, the foster homes can get pretty stressed if they don't know what to do. And they're already volunteering their time, and their energy and working with the decompression phase of these dogs, and usually the medical phase as well. Before they get adopted into homes, which that's even more successful if a dog has went through decompression and whatever medical treatments they need to by the time they get into an adoptive home. Yes. I just love this model so much. There's so many benefits to it. Right. And then you all came on, and I saw such a huge shift.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's not me alone. What has happened is we work with veterinarians, and we use a clinical animal behavior model where we address any clinical differentials. If an animal isn't feeling well, it's not going to be a happy dog, and it's not going to be this perfectly well-behaved animal, just as we are. If we have a headache, we're not maybe going to be perfectly nice that particular day, right?
I'm not fit to be in society if I have a headache.
Right? The same is true for animals. If you're not feeling well, your behavior may not be that great. You may not want to engage with people. You may not want to play. You may not even want to go out for walks, right? So working with the veterinarians to make sure that they're healthy. And if they are stressed, it's actually kind of few and far between that we get an animal that's really, really, really struggling behaviorally these days, at least, at the rescue. But if and when that happens, we know we can talk to the vets. We can talk about the animal's neurochemistry. We can talk about reducing the stress levels or the cortisol levels in their brain with things like, an SSRI or a tricyclic antidepressant, or even like a short-term situational anxiolytic. Just something to make them feel comfortable in the moment, and then something to help them later on, just to prime their brain to learn that they are in fact now and forever safe with us. So we work as a team. And then what I've also noticed is by working with these really dedicated volunteers, there are so many dedicated volunteers that we now have this like critical mass of folks at the rescue who know how to work through things like separation related panic. They know when something is behaviorally challenging or when it's just a dog decompressing and it needs a little bit of time to relax before it goes out for its first big walk, or it goes out before its first big meeting with an adopter. We have folks that recognize the symptoms of fear, and they don't just automatically assume now that, oh, this dog is, barking at other dogs, it's a mean dog. No, they know the dog's really, really scared. So we have this wonderful critical mass of folks that actually have a pretty solid understanding of behavior and can jump in to help, even if one of the 6 dog trainers is not available that day. There's someone now that has been there, done that, and understands at least what to do in the short term, which is, I couldn't ask for anything nicer, to be honest.
I mean, I'll tell you, from that day of that crate situation and my crate training now, exponentially different. And even that day with that crate training compared to 20 years ago, exponentially different. So that's the thing. We have to have fluidity in life, in anything, because we're always learning and changing and growing, and there's always more information to help us and help guide us.
Right. Well, I mean, the very definition of life to some extent is about evolution and evolving and getting better and becoming more specialized in what we do at the most basic level, right?
Yeah. And, I believe around when you came on, the the vet situation changed.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did not have a great vet that we
Yes.
were going to. I actually kind of didn't like taking the dogs there because it wasn't warm. It wasn't caring. It was great that they, when rescue organizations go partner up with veterinarians, the veterinarians are taking a hit. They're not doing it for full cost.
No, they're not.
So it was great that we had a veterinarian, but
Yeah.
I didn't feel that connection with them.
Right.
And the vet that you brought on, or that you made the connection with, I believe.
Oh,
right?
no. The vet actually reached out to the rescue
Oh, I thought it was through
independently.
you.
No, it was not through me.
Oh my gosh.
No.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Because that changed the game.
Yep.
So many things have happened for this organization that
God.
have made it such a powerhouse of positivity.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching the evolution of that.
I wish I could take credit for bringing on that vet, but I didn't.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And now there's two.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
I sent one of my clients who actually ended up adopting one of the dogs through the rescue.
Nice.
And I mean, they have put the work in with this dog.
Nice.
And it's amazing to watch that, to watch what they've done and the relationship that's grown for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not easy. They had to integrate this dog with their cats. And
Mm-hmm.
this dog is potentially a pretty big roughhouser with cats where they wouldn't leave them alone together.
Mm-hmm.
But they have called on trainers. They have, the amount of work that they do is, if I could bottle that up and give it to everyone that adopted a shelter pet, or even if you look at animals through breeders,
Mm-hmm.
they're not just perfect,
Oh, no.
right? They
No.
can have plenty of behavior issues or medical issues,
Yeah,
right? So that's the
absolutely.
thing, is that, I get this a lot when people know that I'm working with animal rescue and they're telling me about their new pet and they're like, oh, I couldn't go through, animal rescue because I've had a bad experience.
So unfortunate.
I know, it's really unfortunate. And I'm, at that point, I already know that they're defensive because they're talking
Right.
to me and I work with animal rescue. So I stay pretty quiet about it because I want to congratulate them and be excited for them. But I'm like, that bred animals can have lots of behavioral issues.
Yes.
That you can get puppies and kittens through animal rescue. There's pegging one experience on an entire system. I feel like you said, is really unfair.
Oh, God. I got bit by 10 mosquitoes in Florida once. It doesn't mean I'm never going to go to Florida again, right?
Only 10.
They were big ones. They were big mosquitoes.
There's other
All at
reasons.
once. All at once.
Jeez.
But
Yeah.
I think it's kind of illogical to base a single experience or compare all possible future outcomes on a single experience.
Right.
But, humans are funny that way. So.
Yes, I do agree. Talking about the foster system, though, I've been a foster home for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to say painfully because I have such a heart connection to animals. The only time that it was a little bit easier for me, heart-wise, was when I actually had my soul dog, and she made the decision if I was going to adopt a dog or not. And because I had such a connection with her, I was okay with that. And I love the model. I know that they're going on to a great home. I know that they're going to have a great life. I know that I helped to save them, right? And save their life and get them out of a shelter system. But these past years, when I haven't had a dog companion, it's been a lot harder. It's been a lot harder for those dogs to move on from my home. And I get much more attached when they come in. But foster homes are such a great model. One of the biggest reasons is if you are actually looking to adopt a dog, it's a no-brainer,
Right.
right? So you start fostering, and if that dog isn't the right fit for you, then there's no guilt in that situation.
Right.
You've been a foster home, you've been the transition for them, because this is a successful model compared to the shelter system at this point. In this particular foster-based rescue organization,
Oh, yes. The
it's
dogs never.
fantastic,
Yes.
because in the shelter
Okay.
system, there can always be a chance that the
Right.
dog may be returned to the shelter
To the
system.
shelter. That's
Hopefully
correct.
that doesn't happen, and hopefully that percentage is very small. But in this particular foster-based system, that's not going to happen.
Correct.
So you are helping to save a dog's life. You're getting them out of a shelter system for good. And even if it hurts a little bit because you got a little bit attached, but you don't feel like they're the perfect fit for your family, your kids, your cats, your work schedule, whatever, they move on to a fantastic family that's been vetted by the rescue organization, you know, and they're getting a great forever life. And you get to find, hopefully, that companion that works with your lifestyle. So fostering actually produces much better outcomes as well for long-term adoptions.
Yeah. And there's actually some good science behind probably the efficacy of fostering as well. There is hard data about what happens to animals living in like an institutional context, any kind of kennel environment. It's stressful for them. It's cold or it's too hot. It is not necessarily very comfortable. Certainly not going to be as comfortable as a nice warm house with a sofa or a bed to lay on. It is loud. There's typically lots of other stressed animals in those contexts. You're not really able to form an attachment to someone the way you would if you lived in a home. And all of these things culminate in higher cortisol levels in the brain. The animals are just going to be less comfortable and a lot more stressed. When you do have an animal in a foster home and you do give it, you know, that week or so to decompress, you really get to see a bit more of who that animal truly is and what they can be.
Right. Look at how many dogs get passed over in a shelter.
Oh, yeah.
Because their behavior is completely different.
Right.
Because of the stress, or they're trying to protect themselves in a situation that they deem as frightening.
Yep. You know, a lot of dogs in shelters are in kennels or crates or cages that are open in the front, and they're constantly looking at other dogs or people that they can't access with their noses or with any kind of tactile touch, which means they're always kind of missing a little bit of data, which actually increases their stress because they don't know who's walking in front of them, what they're going to do, if they're going to take something away and never bring it back, if they're going to give them a treat. They don't know. It's scary. And you end up seeing dogs sometimes reacting at the front of those cages and, you know, by snarling even.
Right.
And it's because they're scared. They don't know what's going on. It's because they're stressed, because they're uncomfortable. They may not feel well. They may have lost their entire family and they don't know why. I know cats often kind of curl up into themselves and don't move much when they're in shelters, or when you walk into cat rooms in shelters, there's often lots and lots and lots of cats in there, and cat folks will usually tell you cats don't love sharing space to that extent. Typically
small space,
and it's not really set up in a way that's very feline friendly, to be honest. Typically cats have really, really specific environment requirements that can't be met in a shelter. So,
and how many of those cats and dogs are part of that 1.6 million that are getting euthanized every year?
Probably a lot,
you
know.
I mean, I know just through the rescue, we've seen a few cases where the information that they had was like the dog might be a little snappy or something like that. They get into the foster home, nothing. None of that behavior.
That's right.
And I think that's so important to understand. Foster homes are heroes.
Yes, they are.
Because they're going through this time, you know, they're even through heart pain or heart connection, they're taking these dogs in, working with those behaviors, helping them decompress, only to like see them go on to another home, which is fantastic. And that's where I always have this, do I want to ever see the foster dog again? Would they be confused by seeing me? Like I always have all these questions, and there are some times that I'll see them again, and there are some that I just can't. Like I was too connected, and I don't know what that would mean if I saw them again. But I do know that they have loving homes, and I try to keep up with them and see pictures and things like that. It's just a really beautiful system. It's a wonderful way to just help continue to elevate our planet, to try to make a difference. I feel like a lot of humans, we do want to make a difference in our lives or in the world. I guess that's my hope. And for me, this is probably one of the best that I can do because I'm so drawn to it. It's animals are my people.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a little bit cliche to say it, but we humans probably think about it as, you know, making a difference at the macro level, you know, getting, you know, saving 3 lives, that sort of thing. But for that one animal, that's their whole life.
Exactly.
You know, it is everything to them. On the human level, I have a one of my favorite foster moms ever compared fostering to, the Japanese art of repairing broken porcelain or ceramic with like gold leaf, filling it in with gold. And so every time there's a little crack, you fill it in with gold. And she said, that is my heart when I'm fostering. It breaks a little bit every single time I foster a dog and have to send it on to its forever home. But I feel like in doing so and knowing that they're going to live this beautiful, happy life that they previously wouldn't have had they, been euthanized in a shelter. She said it fills, that little crack with gold every time. And over time, she said she feels like it's made her heart a more beautiful heart.
Oh,
isn't that a really perfect?
It's perfect. I hope that she makes that into a post or something. Like, I feel like that would be great for other foster homes to hear. Like, just hearing that fills my heart up.
Yeah.
I have heart pain from my last foster dog. I'm still in heart pain about that. Just hearing that, I'm like, oh, it just feels good.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean I'll ever stop. I won't. Like, it's part of my mission. Even when I tell myself stop because it hurts, I can't. I can't stop myself. I'm on a pause right now because I have a pretty cute little wild blind kitty sidekick, but that's why I'm doing this podcast because it's still my mission.
Yeah.
I still want to get the information out there.
There's always ways to help, even if someone can't foster.
Right.
I personally can't foster. I'd love to, but I can't. My cats are old and would be really, really unhappy if I suddenly brought some plucky, happy, bouncy dog into the house, right?
And that's important to be aware of.
Yeah, yep. Like I have to put my cat's welfare first for the time being. Yep. But there are lots of other ways I can help,
And they are just as important.
Yeah.
We need all the other ways.
Need all the help.
Yeah.
It's all important.
We need the humane trainers. We need the veterinarians. We need the volunteers.
Yep.
We need the directors, the organizers. We need the transporters.
Yep.
We need the flight transporters.
Yep.
There are so many pieces to this puzzle.
Hell, even I think people even underestimate the importance of good artwork in rescue, if you think about it.
Right.
Yep.
I mean,
good artwork sells t-shirts and t-shirts feed dogs.
Exactly. Right? Do you remember this campaign in Oregon? They had a contest. I think it was for kids, but maybe it was for everybody to do a drawing for the Humane Society. And then they put it on a billboard. They chose whatever drawing and put it on the billboard because it's proven that if you put a positive image up for adopting a shelter pet, I don't know the percentage, but they're so much more likely for people to adopt from that shelter than if you put one of those really heart-wrenching...
Like Sarah McLachlan.
Right. Which I think that's the ASPCA, right?
I'm not sure.
Where they have the video where I can't even, if they start the music, I'm like, turn it off.
Yeah.
So this is so interesting because it's going to segue me to something I wanted to talk about. But yes, I agree. If we actually put positive images out, then we react positively. And then that just showcases the actual positive result.
Sure.
Which is the animal and changing their world. Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is what I do as a hypnotherapist and with childbirth. Like, this is kind of part of everything that I want to do is evoke positive emotion because then the result is going to be positivity. Yeah.
Positive reinforcement works on humans too.
Absolutely. Yep. So I wanted to talk about I guess I want to call her mentor, but I don't know if that's true. Christine.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you had suggested her to me. And so I became the FB friends with her, Facebook friends.
Yeah.
And she makes a post about once a year that I love because it's necessary.
Yeah, I think I know which one
you know which one I'm going to talk about?
Yeah.
So I can't remember what exactly it says, so I'm going to just summarize it. But she posts a video that talks about fatigue in animal welfare workers. And when you post upsetting animal stories or posts of animal abuse, you put them out into the world, what you're doing is you're actually just creating more stress and fatigue for these people that are fighting on the front lines for these animals day to day.
Yep.
And possibly taking them away from the fight and taking them away from supporting.
Absolutely. It's very, very, very true. It happens to me a lot. Yep. I Oh God, I think it happened to me this week. You know, there's that very, very inhumane vet case in like Beaverton where the vet was doing inhumane things to the dogs. And
I didn't know about that.
we don't have to go into
let's
the
not go into
details. However, every single time he would pop up in the news, I would get 6 or 7 people saying, Mia, have you seen this? Mia, have you seen this?
And you're getting directly linked to it.
And
my
I'm like,
gosh.
yeah, I've seen it. And there are clearly law enforcement is involved. Animal control is involved. Angry dog guardians are involved. You don't need to tag me on this. I'm not going to contribute anything to this. It is being dealt with. All you've done is exposed me personally to something that is traumatic. Like even thinking about it right now,
Right.
you can probably see me like widening my eyes because I'm like, oh my God, don't start crying over this dog that I've never even met, right?
Yeah.
It meant that I started my day on a really, really negative note for about a week straight. And I had to go in and talk to people about being kinder to their dog, not yelling at their dog, not exposing their cat to scary things, just all sorts of little things that I know are really bad for animal welfare that guardians may not recognize. And it's just having to start your day or your week knowing that you'll have to have difficult conversations with people all day long, already with lots of stress hormone in your own brain from having to deal with having to see those like crappy images.
Yeah. I completely agree.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
Often. I feel even when I'm in the midst of when I was volunteering a lot and I had kind of foster after foster and I went through some hard situations with foster, I absolutely couldn't even take 1 second of it. I literally, I would have to like scan, and if my eyes would start to see something, I'd hit hide right away. But if people aren't giving you even a trigger warning, right? They're not even saying that, and you're seeing this image immediately, it plants a seed into your subconscious.
Right.
I still think about images from years ago.
Me too.
I have nightmares about them.
Me too.
I mean, literally, when people want to tell me a bad animal story, I'm like, don't tell me.
Right.
I will have nightmares about it. I cannot hear it. They still say it.
And truly, honestly, a lot of the times we are actually powerless in a lot of those situations. It's not in our jurisdiction. We may not live in that community even. And sometimes it makes me angry at folks because I'm like, why are you telling me you are just as capable of calling your local representative or your local government? You're just as capable of reaching out to the organization that is, potentially not treating an animal well. You are just as capable.
Exactly.
And it's just,
I feel like it's a form of sensationalism. Like I tell people, if you're going to post something, I've literally said this, if you're going to post about this awful thing, at least post where people can go to sign a petition, post where someone can call a representative about this, be constructive about it. If you're going to put this kind of trauma out into, we're all on social media, we're all out on the interweb. If you're going to do that, be constructive about it. But if you're just doing it, what's the change? The only change is you're creating a really hard day for somebody else because you're having a hard time with it.
Right.
It's like passing on the trauma.
I assume people, because they feel traumatized themselves, because they care, because it hurts them too. I'm sure they just want people to share in it, or they may not know what to do and they're hoping somebody somewhere will do something.
Right.
However, I think that, what Christine does is right. She is just trying to educate people that your assumptions about that situation are incorrect. And you need to consider the folks that are actually out there doing the work.
Yes.
And what they're experiencing and what they have to face on a regular basis. So,
absolutely.
And that goes from, it's not just animals, that's people that work in mental health, it's people that work with children, it's teachers, it's, oh God, I mean, there's all sorts of professions where people take on a lot of emotional trauma to do the work that they do.
Right.
A lot of emotional labor, I should say, not trauma.
Yeah. So I thank Christine for putting that out.
Oh, me too.
Because it is about education. Like I never really believe that people have bad intentions with what they're setting out to do.
No,
but the result can be a bad result.
Part of it is learning to be more and more empathic ourselves. If you think about the experience of the recipient of your messages, you probably won't post those messages, or you'll ask first.
Right.
I've found myself kind of recognizing that, there have been a few times I have shared stories with people I usually don't do in social media, but like I've told my husband, for example, about some of the things I have seen in animal welfare work. And he is like, I cannot hear this. This is too hard to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, why didn't you ask me first? And I'm like, you know what? You're actually right. Why didn't I ask you if I could potentially burden you in this way?
Right.
Some folks are okay with it. They do have the emotional fortitude that day, in that moment, in that hour, to actually be receptive of that message. And sometimes they don't. And it's going to vary from day to day. So I've kind of gotten in the habit of asking people first if I can share something with them that may not be pleasant to hear, just because I need to talk to someone.
Thank you.
And I think that's really just being empathic and understanding that they may have heard some ugly things that are difficult for them to hear as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate it when people ask me to.
Yeah.
They really do though. So,
right, because
just
everyone's
tell me-
like, this is your field, so of course you want
Of course
all of
you
this
wanna know.
information.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a level of awareness that I think
Right.
the more we talk about it, you know, we're all learning. I
Yeah.
make plenty of mistakes. So
I do too.
I love hearing more information so I can be better.
Yeah.
I can do better.
Yeah.
So lastly, I want to talk about something that I am so excited that I have you sitting here to talk about, and
Okay.
that's being an animal death doula.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like this is a relatively unknown
Yes.
area,
Yeah.
and I want this information out.
Sure.
I got to experience it with you, and so I'm going to give you the floor to kind of talk about what an animal death doula does.
Sure. So it's a fairly simple concept. Animal death doulas assist animals and their guardians, if they have a guardian, at the time of their death or the time leading up to their death, to ensure that it is as comfortable and kind as it can possibly be. It's going to be different for every animal and every family. Some death doulas that I have known are present months beforehand, as soon as an animal is diagnosed with a terminal illness. Some
Wow.
kind of come in just in the hour of death. Some are there a week before, and some are there afterwards as a way to help the family honor their animal spiritually through whatever ritual that is appropriate for that family. So it varies. When I first looked into it, I knew that paradigm existed for humans. There are death midwives and people that are just present for humans that are dying. When I looked into it for animals, I couldn't really find anything but two women. There's a woman in Australia who does that, and there happens to be someone in Portland, Oregon. Her name is Uta Lupertz. Her passion, her calling, I shouldn't say passion, her calling in life is ensuring that animals have good deaths, that they die with dignity, that they die with peace, that they die surrounded by those that love them, even if their loved one is just someone that's there to love them for
Okay.
for cut that out.
It's an emotional topic.
Yeah, it's for that hour. You know, she does death doulaing for animals that are, you know, in shelters sometimes that are being dropped off for euthanasia. So she'll be the person that loves them in that last hour.
The strength.
Mm,
Oh my gosh.
absolutely. So anyway, excuse me. So I decided that I wanted to be proficient at that skill after I was kind of visiting my aunt, and her cat had started showing the signs and symptoms of death kind of suddenly and unexpectedly, and I just happened to be there, and she was scared, and she woke me up at maybe like 7:30 in the morning, and we rushed the cat to the vet. And I knew, just having had lots and lots of animals, and she's had fewer, I believe, but I knew the cat was actively dying, and the veterinarian on call at the hospital was really very brusque with the animal and with my aunt's feelings, and was going to use a euthanasia technique that was really not very, very gentle and unnecessary, because the cat was really in kind of like the throes of death labor and actively dying, like would have been gone within the hour. If that, maybe it was probably more like 10 minutes. So he had concocted this plan where he was going to do a euthanasia by injecting, you know, the drug into the cat's heart, with my aunt not in the room. That would have killed the cat instantly, and it would have died without her guardian, her primary attachment figure there with her. And I felt that was just completely unacceptable, that he wasn't recognizing the symptoms of imminent death that could have been really soft and quiet and peaceful in a room with just my aunts and the cat and a blanket if need be. And it was really chaotic and not appropriate. There were dogs barking all around the cat. There was nothing on the table, nothing soft. It was nasty and unnecessary. So I wanted to make sure that I had the skill set to advocate and intervene if and when I saw that happening again. So I searched and searched and searched and found Uta. And Uta and I met and we talked about, okay, how can we do this? Animal hospice is her calling. It was something that I was really, really interested in. And she said, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to create a workshop about this. And she calls it, the Big Sky Workshop. And she runs it a few times a year and people come in. Sometimes they're professionals, sometimes they're vet techs, sometimes they're just dog guardians. There are folks from all different aspects of the animal professions and guardians that really care about animals and that they have good deaths. And she teaches them how to make it as nice and loving for them as possible. It ends up being, if you kind of know what you're doing and have some education about death, it is not scary. And if it's not scary, you don't focus on yourself and your fear. You focus on the needs of the animal at that moment and the needs of the family at that moment. And you can kind of save your grieving for later and focus on making sure that the last moments are good moments. Every death that I've attended to since then has in fact been beautiful. I hope I die in a similar way. It's that beautiful. So that's how that came about. And I recommend anyone that really loves their animal to go and do this for their animal. I know that Uta's biggest tip is always plan for it. Be prepared. Rehearse in your mind what you're going to need as a human that's grieving. Know what your animal's going to need. If you know your animal loves a certain location, plan for that location. If you know that your animal loves certain toys and blankets and foods, plan to have them on hand. My education is a little bit of a blend. Like a lot of death doulas take a very, very spiritual path with it, which I personally don't. There's a little bit of that, and that's something that that grows in me over time, but I tend to look at things very concretely. There are good welfare states and bad welfare states, and I know from animal welfare science, there are ways that we can concretely make a situation better for an animal. That could be introducing an appeasing pheromone that kind of reminds an animal of being safe and secure with their mom. That can mean making sure that they have been given subcutaneous fluids prior to euthanasia, so that when they are given euthanasia medications, it happens a lot faster because their veins are hydrated. It's not something that says, it's a easy fluid, I hate to say fluid again, but fluid process.
Right.
It's recognizing when an animal really is ready to go versus not, and knowing that there's being able to recognize that it helps to be healthy enough to receive euthanasia to some extent. Sometimes, like my aunt's cat, that cat did not need euthanasia. It would have been better if it had been euthanized a few hours before, but at that point, the right thing to do is just be present in those last few moments and kind of knowing the difference. And I think there's really concrete ways to measure that objectively. And that's really important for me. I think being able to do so eliminates a lot of fear for me personally. I don't fear death anymore.
Wow.
At all.
Wow.
For animals. Of course, I grieve for all of them profoundly. Maybe that's the spiritual part. But but knowing that you can kind of marry the science to less concretely measurable things like love and caring, I think that matters. Having been present for a few deaths, being someone that is not religious, honestly, on 2 separate occasions, I have felt kind of kneeling over, in these cases, they were both dogs that have died. I've felt a rush of warmth up from their body the moment they've died.
Aww.
I've even had a veterinarian kind of grab me suddenly and say, "Oh my God, did you feel that?"
That gives me goosebumps.
Me too. So
what a wonderful gift.
It is. It is the last gift we can give our animals. The last great gift we can give our animals is a good death, wherever that may be. For some animals, that might be at home. For some animals, it might be outside in a park. For some animals, it may be at a veterinarian where they have the right, biological support. It's going to be very different for every animal. I don't think it's better or worse to have a natural death versus an assisted death, like a euthanasia with, some kind of intravenous injection. It's not always intravenous though, now that I'm saying that, depending on how old the animal is. But it's a beautiful gift. And I think it's really important to be present for animals in that final moment. And it's an honor.
It's a big topic.
Oh my God, it's an honor to be with those animals in that final moment.
Well, and it's such a way to honor them.
Absolutely.
But what amazing support for the families of these animals who are in trauma.
What you can do is support them in their decisions, right, and help them make whatever decision they make as good as it can be, whether you're a veterinarian or a friend or whomever. There really often is not really any right or wrong answers kind of in those final weeks or days or whatever the case may be. There are ways to make every choice better though, I think.
I've been with you during a death of an animal. I learned so much from you and I take so much from that. But watching you, I don't think watching is the right word. Feeling you during that transition and your strength and it was like you were this solid pillar of strength during that time and that decision. And, we kind of went through it together. And you were the one that was in the room with the animal when the animal transitioned. And I wasn't able to. I had just euthanized my 17-year-old animal kid. What was it, 2 months prior in the same room. And this was a foster animal for very intense behavioral reasons. And this decision was made. It was not an easy decision for anyone involved. It's a little emotional.
Or a lot emotional. Like, we can be real. It's one of the hardest decisions any animal guardian could ever have to make. It's not, when it's a behavior issue, it's never going to be easy or as easy as, someone who has an animal that's terminally ill.
Right. It was a 2-year-old dog.
Yeah.
It was a 2-year-old dog. I, in 20 years, had never come up with a situation like that. So I was kind of flailing and I was in trauma. I was definitely in trauma for that. And honestly, Mia, if you hadn't been here, I think as the role of death doula, but you were also as the role of animal trainer and volunteer and advocate and all of those things, I honestly don't know how it would have went. I mean, obviously we can't tell because we were blessed enough that you were here and that you were here with him through that transition while I sat outside. But it just changed my life. Your strength and your ability to honor him and his life and be there next to him, no matter how hard it was, no matter how difficult it was. And I think having you with me during any of those transitions would be such an honor and such a huge support. I definitely advocate for anyone to look into this because it's such an emotional and upsetting time. Guidance and just support in helping that transition be more peaceful only can feel better to me that someone was there to help with that.
Good.
I want to say that the reason Beezus the Brave is here is because of that situation. So
how so?
I know. Weird segue, right?
Yeah. How?
When I adopted her, I was nervous because I was nervous to go back into that kind of animal love, knowing that I could lose it and grieve again. I was still grieving the loss of my animal kid cat and the death of that foster pup. And I brought her home and she had a seizure. And I just freaked out. One of my cats had died in a seizure, maybe 8 years ago. And it was extremely traumatic for me. Very traumatic transition. Had I had an animal death doula then. But I almost took her back because I didn't know if she could handle my lifestyle, the way that I camp and move, and I'm on the go, and I didn't know if I could handle a cat with seizures after I'd had a cat die in one, and I'd had phenobarbital fail me and whatever else. And Spirit, God, the source, me, whoever, didn't let it happen. The next day I went and got her and brought her back home. I couldn't be without her. Fast forward 3 weeks later, she had another seizure. what happened during that seizure is instead of going into trauma, I went into a softening. And that's because of you. When that dog passed, when we had to euthanize that dog, you told me, you told me that at least that dog knows love. At least he's not in the shelter in a cold room, which is not a loving and peaceful transition. At least he's in a home and he's been loved for how, at least we know, for as long as he was in our foster system. His age didn't matter, you know, all the other things didn't matter at that point. And when Beezus had that second seizure and I knew that I'm probably going to have to go into phenobarbital and neurologists and things like that, I just thought, it doesn't matter if she dies in a month or 2 months or 6 months. If she gets to live out of a cage, out of a basement, in love and happiness, then that's the best life that she can have, even if it's going to hurt me. Right? So it was like you brought this sense of, I'm going to honor her and help her make every day the best possible, even if she has to be on these meds, even if she goes earlier than I ever want her to. And I was still healing. So that was a huge thing for my heart to soften into that and be okay with not being guaranteed a long life for my animal.
Right.
Does that make sense? I'm emotional, so I don't know if I'm saying it right.
No, absolutely. That was very eloquent, actually.
And
but animals,
I never even thought about it twice after.
Yeah.
From that moment on, I fell deeply in love with her.
Aww.
I was holding her kind of at arm's distance. I was like, I don't know if I can keep her, right? And when I just thought about it that way, like, I get to give her this amazing life. I get to show her the world for however long she is here.
Right.
I just softened and fell in love with her.
It's really meeting an animal exactly where they are, isn't it? At that day or time. And animals live in the moment. I know that they do. It's not, they remember their past, and I know that they do, but they don't conceive of the future in the same way that humans do. Their brains are a little bit different in that respect. So every good moment is everything to them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So.
You have some of the best tidbits of wisdom that I've ever come across. And I've been working in this field for 20 years, like not full time, obviously, you know, it's on and off and, you know, it's when I have the time and space in my life when I can do it. But I'd say you're a mentor for me.
Well, you taught me some things too. When we did go through that behavior euthanasia together, as you probably know, I tend to distance myself from emotion, but knowing that it was okay to go and grieve deeply was really, really important to me. And, you know, I left here and bawled my eyes out for a few days, actually. But not feeling like I absolutely, you know, had to distance myself was a really good lesson for me as well. So...
yeah, I'm very in touch with that crying part of me and that love part. I love so hard. And I think we all love hard, but yeah.
It's when you invest a lot in someone that is so needy, such as an animal, right? Especially if it's a special needs animal. It's hard not to become even more attached to them, you know?
And he was such a good boy. He was such a good boy with really difficult circumstances.
Yes.
You know, and that was the product of him having a hard environment for his needs.
Right. You know, in his case, as you know, he was deaf. He was born deaf. I would say I have never encountered a behavior euthanasia that is strictly about behavior. There is always some kind of clinical component, some kind of medical issue that's making the animal very, very uncomfortable and unable to live a life comfortably enough where they can function in a way that is happy. And that was absolutely the case for him. You know, his behavior issues were directly related to his disability, and his disability directly impacted how he interacted with the world and how the world interacted with him. And it made the world a scary place for him. He just didn't have the before foster care, he didn't have the right people doing the right things for him, and it made him a very, very very fearful and unpredictable guy, which is, in the end, as you know, I felt it was not safe or humane to keep him kind of always having to worry about random things for the rest of his life. No matter what we did, it was just still too hard for him.
Right.
You were, as you were told, you're kind of like our last stop for him if this doesn't work, because you were the perfect home, you had the perfect environment, you were the perfect person, and still perfect did not work well enough for him. He was still having these big bouts of, it was almost like PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely. PTSD.
They do have, it's not discussed often, but there is canine PTSD, and it was just really, really evident in him. And I think he suffered long enough where his brain was not wired in a normative way that made it easy for him to really function had he been raised perfectly. And even with perfect, it still wasn't enough for him. And that's when I realized it's not the right thing to ask him to continue to do this. And it's not the right thing to ask others to potentially be put at risk for a dog that's so scared that they're willing to corner or bite someone. I don't know.
Yeah. Since then, I went through a lot of guilt.
Oh, I do too. I do too.
And I think the only thing that got me through is when I'd have to break it down, and I would have to say, okay, what kind of life did he have in the world? Because he has to be in the world, right? And then I would remember how, even though he couldn't hear, he would be up on the couch, pacing on the couch. And as soon as he would go outside, he'd be running and barking and screaming. And we know that on a walk, which he loved walks, and he had energy, so he needed the walks. That was the hard part. Like, he couldn't just stay in the house and have a very confined environment.
Right.
And he would scream at the top. There were times I thought he was going to get out of his collar, and then I didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
It was really, really scary, and it was scary noises. So when I would logically think about that, it would get me through the guilt of why wasn't I enough? Why, how this has never happened before? How was my home not appropriate for him? You know what I mean? There were so many questions.
I know exactly what you mean. As a trainer, I'm like, what could I have done differently? Could someone else have done a better job? And I've talked about it to other folks, and I actually had someone that I look up to say, Mia, this is survivor's guilt. It is what every person that loses someone that they love goes through. And I'm like, holy crap, you're right. It is like pretty classic survivor guilt. No matter what you do when someone dies, everybody experiences the guilt of being the one that is still around, no matter what it is.
That resonates.
Yeah.
That resonates. I love it when people give you that thing.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this podcast, is a type of support group with information, and trying to elevate the consciousness as much as we can. I feel like we should probably wrap up.
Okay.
I'm happy to be ending talking about him. I feel like this is actually the first talk that we've had that I've kind of not went into internal hysterics. I feel like I've grown a little bit through this talk about him.
I think about him all the time, sometimes every day. So,
and I feel like you're the only person I've really talked to about him, because we were both there.
Yeah.
Every time we talk, I feel like I still go through that, like I'm crying on the inside. And I cried during this talk, but I feel like I grew a little bit in my healing.
Oh, nice.
So thank you.
I'm glad. Well, thank you.
We just needed to throw some mics and some headphones on and talk a little deeper about it, I think,
Yeah. Why haven't we done this sooner?
Is there anything else that you want to put out there to the animal community? Because there's so many people that are listening that want your wisdom. So if you have any last tidbits, we'd love to hear them.
For me, I would say if someone is facing a behavior euthanasia, I do maintain a website that has lots and lots and lots of resources. It's behavioreuthanasia.com, but the project is called Behavior Euthanasia Empathy Project.
That's fantastic.
Yes. And that's actually something that grew directly out of seeing your experience with a behavior euthanasia. I realized there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. And no matter what way you do it, it is really, 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 really hard. And there are almost no resources out there for that. So if there were anything else I would want to say is that train your animals humanely. If you have a trainer that is using a shock collar, a prong collar, a choke chain, if they're hitting or kicking or jabbing your dog, fire them.
Right.
Fire them.
Mm-hmm.
They are not aware of the science, and the science conclusively says that this is not the best way to teach an animal. It is not effective. It is not humane. You cannot bond with an animal that you are hurting. There are lots of good resources to find humane trainers. Sometimes websites are really not very transparent when you're looking, but if anybody ever, regardless of their credentials, regardless of how charismatic they are, regardless of their education level, if they try to put a shock, choke, or prong collar on your dog, leave immediately. They don't know what they're doing. Find someone else who's not using those techniques.
And know that there are people out there.
Oh, there are lots of people out there.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of estimate that there are probably about 100 humane behavior professionals in Portland alone. So if you're in Portland, there's someone that can help you. And even if you live someplace else, you can call humane dog trainers if you live in one of those inhumane dog training deserts, and they'll coach you over the phone or they'll coach you via video.
Yes.
So you're never, ever, ever alone to the point where you need to use an inhumane dog trainer or a cat trainer.
Right. Video consultations at this point have become so popular.
Yeah.
That's great. So there's no specific website that is a guild or anything that might...
There is one organization. There are lots of organizations that credential dog trainers because there's no legal requirement to become a dog trainer.
Okay.
Literally anybody can say that they're a dog trainer and operate as one. I tend to prefer Pet Professionals Guild because they have a very, very, very hard line against aversive treatment of dogs and cats and any species you're working with. That is not true for all credentialing bodies. So that's why I kind of said, regardless of the credential or the education, look for these big warning signs.
Okay.
Hitting, kicking, poking, grabbing, shock collars, prong collars, choke collars.
Right.
Those are your really, really clear signals, regardless of what the paperwork or website of the professional says.
Right. Because we know that a dog that fears us is not a good, supportive, loving relationship.
Nope. It's, and to get to the heart of it, if you are afraid, you cannot learn, and you cannot change the behavior of an animal that is afraid or in pain. And devices that cause fear or people that cause fear or pain, they can't be teachers. They absolutely cannot. It is not scientifically sound, and it's not ethically sound either.
Right. That's essential information. Thank you for saying that. People really need to understand that the results of this are much worse than you can even imagine.
They're really bad sometimes. The data pretty much says the dog that is pretty much most likely to bite you is a dog that has been trained aversively. The data is pretty clear about that. There's lots of conversations about spay and neuter and whether or not that impacts, dog bite risk and lots of other things. But the data always kind of points to dogs that are treated aversively or trained aversively, or even worse, if they are trained with both positive reinforcement and punishment, those dogs are most likely to deliver a bite because they never know, are you going to be nice to me today or are you going to hurt me today? Right? What a terrifying way to live.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and I know I've said it before, but the amount of information that I've gotten from you, I don't know if this is widespread amongst all the humane trainers, but it changes everything that you're doing at home.
Yeah, it does.
So if you're just going to see somebody and they're just shocking your dog to get a behavior, that's not actually giving you tools and tips and information to be taking into your home and watching for. Like
no,
the way that
not.
you get into like such subtle nuances. Like I said, I feel like you're my mentor and I feel like you've changed the way that I interact with animals greatly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking that information and sharing it with everyone.
Yes.
I mean, we all do better when we all do better, right?
Yes.
Right?
And that's what I hope for everyone who, is hopefully adopting beautiful animals from the shelter rescue systems into their home. I hope that they get this information as well. I hope that they find the humane trainers and know that there is help out there and there is support out there. And it makes such a difference with the tips and tools that you take home with you can shift a behavior so quickly when you actually practice it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the big claims to fame of inhumane trainers is that they claim that they can change behavior really, really fast. And humane trainers used to say good training takes time and patience, and that's true. However, what I have found is that I can change the behavior of a really fearful dog in about 10 minutes by being kind with them, giving them their space. You've seen it, you know, we've seen it, right? Humane training can actually be pretty efficient too, and it lasts forever.
Right.
You know?
Yes. And it produces such a great relationship.
Absolutely. And that's really why people have dogs and cats, is because they want that relationship.
I mean, let me tell you, that dog, I haven't used his name, but you were his favorite person in the world. That's that relationship. You were the person that gave him consistency and love. And I mean, when you would come over, he would light up. You all didn't see it, but it shows me that type of relationship that can build and be really strong really quickly. So thank you. Thank you for being such a great person in his life.
Thank you for, you know, doing the same. Honestly, you gave him exactly what he needed in the end. Which was, you know, warm, loving home.
Sweet boy. His ashes are in between us right now, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so if people want to get into your puppy and kitten classes or get a hold of you to do some one-on-one training with them,
they can go to my website. It's megaheartsdogandcat.com.
Fantastic. I can't believe I forgot this. We're just going to touch on it quick because I know that for time-wise we need to wrap up. If you had a dream guest for your own podcast, who would it be and why?
That's a tough one. I'd probably want to talk to Patrick Stewart.
That was mine.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the reasons are probably obvious.
Yes.
But
you answer for both of us.
I love Star Trek.
Oh my gosh.
So much. And I love dogs so much. And to see that he is this like serious, crazy dog foster dad now. He loves fostering dogs. He fosters these big, chunky pit types. And every image, every video, you can just tell he just is so in love with this paradigm, this process, the animals. I would love to sit down and chat with him about that.
I want to hang out with him and one of his foster dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you see videos of him like spooning the dogs and he's raising such awareness.
Yep.
I mean, he's really doing so much good for the pit bull breed.
Yeah.
And all of the false stereotypes out there about that breed, like, he is my dog animal hero.
Right. And I never would have guessed that he could be this big softie, because
it makes when
you watch him acting, he's always this very composed, quiet, stern sort of personality. And give him a pit bull and he's like mush. So I
developed the biggest crush on him when I started seeing him with pit bulls. I'm like,
it changes everything.
I am now in love with Patrick Stewart.
Changes everything.
Oh my gosh, that made it quicker.
Okay.
That was amazing. Mia, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This animal rescue, it's in my blood, it's in my bones. Like,
it's a calling.
It's a calling. Even through all the heart pain, it's a calling, and I'll never stop.
Same.
But this was huge for me to get you over here and mic'd up, because I hope this blows up. I hope it goes viral. You gave us so many wonderful tips, but you also gave us really great statistics. You gave us great facts that I feel like people don't really know. This could change a lot for awareness, and that's my hope. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
I I really just wanted to come over here to meet Beezus. So, whatever it took. I was like, I'm getting an invite to that house so I can pet that cat.
I know. I've had a few of those,
Yeah.
a few of those visitors. She's a special one, isn't she?
Yeah. You probably have gone from being Lori to Beezus's mom now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll happily take it.
Yeah.
I'm crazy about her. And you know what's funny is like every day I say, I can't wait to get you a dog.
Yeah.
So when I'm in a place where I can actually adopt a dog, I'm adopting the dog for Beezus now, which
Yeah.
of course I can't wait to have a dog too, but Beezus needs a dog. She needs a playmate and I know that she would love one. And I'd like to have a therapy dog for her seizures when I'm not home. So that's going to be an exciting day for the podcast to have 2 co-hosts instead of 1. She's actually been sleeping this whole talk because I played with her all morning. So
nice.
All right, we're going to wrap up. And with that, let's normalize the struggles, celebrate the quirks, and lean into the light. From myself and Beezus the Brave, happy Wild Heart Revolution, friends.
All right.
Dun-dun-dun. That was good. Thank you so much.
We done?
We're done.
Okay, good.